Because originally there are 12 tribes of Israel.
12. Yeah, let's get a little context.
Yeah.
12 tribes of Israel. There was a unified kingdom. Then there became a civil war, basically. They weren't really fighting with each other. They just cut off ties. And the northern kingdom was 10 tribes, and the southern kingdom was Judea, 2 tribes. And so we're the descendants, us Jews, from the Judean kingdom, the southern kingdom. Jew comes from Judah.
This is right after King Solomon, right? The king's
Yes,
the civil
shortly
war.
after King
His
Solomon.
children,
Yeah, because the taxes for the temple were too high for the north, so they seceded.
Republicans.
Right, a big in terms of terminology, something I picked up from you was back then everyone was Israelites.
Yes, it was the house of
Jews
Israel.
were specifically from a specific tribe called Judea.
Well, the word
Or
Jew didn't come
something
into
like that.
reality yet.
Right.
But
We were the Israelite nation.
yes.
Made up of
So let's just for the general population that knows general history about this, you have the Egyptians, you have the you have the Israelites. Israelites as slaves. They come out of Egypt, become a nation, independent, and then fast forward, establish a nation state of Israel, right? Would it be called? Would it be safe to say
Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth? What?
A kingdom.
The kingdom of Israel
Yeah.
under King David. People know King David. People know King Solomon, and then everyone just starts to just get lost into the pages of history.
Correct.
So now we are at the Civil War period in which the children, the descendants of King Solomon, began to bicker.
Yes, the taxes for the temple were too high for the north, so they seceded, made their own temple, and they went into exile. The Assyrian army came and exiled, which the Assyrian army was known to do. It was more cost effective than just going to war. They exiled the northern 10 tribes towards the far east, and many of them ran into the north, and some hit the sea on ships. And the Judeans stayed in the first temple period still of King Solomon in Judea for another period of time afterwards, just by themselves, which is where the Jew started to become a reality.
And this is
that was
two
all that
tribes?
was left.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, because it was Judah and Benjamin in the south, and you also had the tribe of Levi who lived amongst all the tribes, because Levi didn't own. So we have a Levite with us right now. The Levites didn't own land in
Wash my
Israel,
hands.
so they didn't have their own place where they were just amongst everyone because they were the
Interspersed.
teachers.
Ah.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is actually, before we get into the controversial stuff, this is just cool Jewish history.
Super cool, because especially the prophecies, back then said that one day we're going to unite in the future, and even the Vilna Gaon says it's a crucial unification to get to the redemption. So I just look at those prophecies as a really good, Hail Mary that they threw up pass, and here we are in 2022 catching it.
The Hail Mary is an interesting choice of word there.
I know. I was like, is that a good word? Because
Because I don't know if we want to. We're going to confuse a lot.
know what?
A lot of people confused.
I will say in yeshiva, even in yeshiva, when they played football and they throw up a pass, the boys still say Hail Mary for the pass.
So for our evangelical audience, there's still hope for you. But so that's interesting. 10 tribes, historically, everyone agrees on this. This is not controversial. Are expelled or exiled. You're left with the 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin together as Judea, that the modern term Jew comes from.
Yes.
And that's how we identify today, that the Jews of today are basically the ones that have a recognition are from Judea.
We're not even from that kingdom, because that kingdom was sent into exile into Babylon, and then a small remnant of those Babylonians came back to Israel for the second Commonwealth to build the second temple,
Right.
and then we are the descendants of those individuals. So we're the descendants of the remnants of Judea.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, the first temple is King Solomon, and the second temple is, timeline-wise, who built second temple?
Second temple was built.
Herod the
yeah,
Great?
well, you have Ezra and Nehemiah who
Ezra
come
and
back,
Nehemiah.
and then Herod did the renovations after it was already built.
Right.
And then we had a court of the men of the Great Assembly, who still today, my rabbi's rabbi traces back to this court.
Right.
So all the Jewish practices and customs and traditions that we have today, when most people don't realize.
This is covered in the book of Judges. Is this what you're
Yeah,
talking
this all
about?
goes back to the period of the final prophets and Ezra and Nehemiah.
Right, there was a portion of the Israelites that kept that I'm asking kept sort of stricter. They kept the tradition alive while the 10 other tribes were unable to do that.
The Judeans, Judah specifically, was tasked by Jacob to keep the law, the scepter of the law, until the final redemption, till the end of days.
I like that with the scepter of the law. That's good.
Exactly.
That's just good.
And it says, the verse says, they'll hold the scepter of the law until Shiloh comes. And Shiloh is numerical value in the Torah of Mashiach, of Messiah. So we see that the Jewish people were responsible for the law until the Messiah comes.
Any relation to the city of Shiloh? There's only one line of Navi I ever remember. Elkanah went to Shiloh, and then I forgot the rest of the year.
Shiloh's a great place. I visited there. So yeah, basically to answer your question is we were the keepers of the law because we had the temple, we had the courts, and we had the law, and
we
brought
as descendants of the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
Of Judah.
Yeah.
What were the other ones? The other tribes tasked with? Do you know specifically?
I think a lot of them were just farming. You know, one tribe you have Issachar and Zevulun. One was learning, one was working. They were just living their best life, and the temple ruled over the law of the house of Israel.
Right.
The temple is what decided the laws, and that's where they, that's where it all went down.
How does this story play out with what we learned in sort of modern Jewish history with the Sadducees and the Pharisees and all of that stuff? Does that come way later in the timeline?
So that comes later.
And
That
that's
was
dealing still amongst Jews.
yes, that
right?
was inter-Judean beef that was going on.
Inter-Judean beef.
Good name.
That's
for
a great. They
podcast.
serve inter-Judean beef at this Bukharian place. It's amazing. But so I'm fast forwarding because my brain. This is cool, and then my brain is kind of scrambling through the different timelines. But the modern term Jew, which we trace back to the tribe of Judah, and these tribes that we're talking about. I mean, the term Jew today is sort of an umbrella term that does encompass Jews from different parts of the world. So how is that distinct from the 10 lost tribes versus the recognized Jews of the world that are spread out geographically?
Such a good question and so relevant because really now what Jew really means now is the law that the Judeans preserved is being adopted, you know? So, as you mentioned Bukharian before, there's some theories that the Bukharians are such an old community. They were from the 10 tribes, from the first exile of the 10 tribes, not from the Judeans. And they had taken on the law of the Judeans when there was, you know, communication with the Babylonian yeshiva institutions, let's say in the year 700 or 800. That they said, okay, we'll take back the law. So if someone takes on the 613 commandments of the Torah and the law as preserved by the house of Judah, generation to generation, even until today to me, you've merged yourself into this thing called Judah. But at the end times, there's something called the unification between Judah and Israel. You may not even realize, but you say it every single day when you pray in Hebrew.
Don't make assumptions.
Hypothetically, you would say, if you were praying every morning, Tzur Yisrael Kuma Be'ezra Yisrael F'dei Knumecha Yehuda V'Yisrael, that we pray for the unification between the house of Judah and the house of Israel. So when you have a tribe, let's say across the Silk Road, who says, we're from the house of Israel, you know, we don't say, oh, so you're Jewish. We'll say you could become Jewish if you join back to the law, and this is the kingdom of like David's law, so you're in. So that's like what's been happening throughout the exile. But we believe in the future there's going to be a greater unification where it's not individual conversions. There's going to be nations that are going to wake up and unite with us, and it's going to be a whole new reality and a whole new series of laws that are going to emerge from it. It's called the Messianic days, you know, and people may think you're kooky to say we're living in them, but who knows?